Hello, my darlings, and welcome back to Radio Wasteland, the best in paranormal. I'm your host, Chauncey Allworth, and this is my co-host, Kara Kittrick.
Hello.
Good evening, Kara. Do you have any news for us?
Yes, I do. So, former Blink-182 guitarist and living vessel for all manner of paranormal beliefs, Tom DeLonge, will be hosting a History Channel series aimed at building a, quote, indisputable case for the existence of UFOs. The series, entitled Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation, will include DeLonge's interview with military intelligence official Luis Elizondo, who confirmed the existence of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program a few years ago. In other UFO news, a large, long, rectangular object was reported flying low over a highway in Georgia. It was, quote, glowing with various shades of bright orange through surface covered in octagon-shaped windows / exterior shell, said an eyewitness, who also said it was, quote, too massive and moving too quickly to be a balloon. Georgia MUFON chief investigator closed this case as an unknown aerial vehicle. In a very obscure story I found, 7 girls from a Bangladesh school were hospitalized for mass hysteria after they passed out in unison while singing the national anthem last Monday. Officials believe the hysteria may have been triggered by mental health or, quote, changes in weather. Turning now to sea monster news, there were 2 new sightings of the Loch Ness monster in 5 days, although this was not reported on in the mainstream press. A woman from Manchester claims to have snapped a photo of the beast, while an Irish tourist claims he caught an image of the celebrity cryptid on his webcam. Neither story has been confirmed, but that has not stopped a new outbreak of Nessie mania in the region. Finally, last week, President Trump retweeted a Pizzagate conspiracy theorist, a QAnon conspiracy theorist, and a conspiracy theorist who believed that the New Zealand mosque attack was staged to limit gun rights, in a historic bit of representation for the reality-averse everywhere. Back to you, Chauncey.
All right. Thank you, Kara. So, you know what? I like to work my way backwards through these things. Trump retweeting stuff is like, it's weird because, you know, Obama was really credited as the president in the campaign that sort of brought social media as a force to elections.
Sure.
But, man, Trump has taken it to a whole nother level where he is being... I can't imagine people looking at my postings so closely and, you know...
Right, yeah.
You know, I wonder if he's, like, reposting the Pizzagate going, oh, this is really cool, Dan, I like this one. My buddy Dan. That Dan, what's up? You know, it's like... Or if he's really just all... You know, Hillary obviously had the pizza sex ring, you know.
Right.
I don't know. I have a hard time with that one. How could anybody believe that there was a child sex ring in a pizza parlor? Now, if there was, I am totally like, that's pretty crazy stuff. That's pretty...
Right. But, yeah, there's no evidence whatsoever to support that idea.
Yeah, it's just just way over the top. And what were the other 2 that he was posting?
QAnon conspiracy theorist.
What's QAnon?
That's a guy. He posts lots of... QAnon as a person, but they post lots of very strange things and ultimately believe that the government is controlled by, what is it? I think it's some sort of cult full of, that, like, drinks the blood of infants.
Yeah. So wouldn't Trump be controlled by that? I mean, that's a weird thing for him to retweet.
Well, I don't know. He's like the Facebook grandma president. You know, he just posts crazy stuff.
Totally.
And
yeah. So yeah, every time my dad would call, I always knew it was him because I would pick up the phone and I would say hello, and then I would hear this, and then I'd hear a bunch of like beeping of buttons and stuff like that, and then he'd be all, hello, Chauncey? And I always knew it was him because I had to wait for the throat to clear and the beeping of buttons.
Sure.
And so, yeah, you know, I get it.
Right.
And Trump really reminds me of my dad. He does. He does. He has that same... My dad was the sort of guy who would have complimented the figure of the wife of the leader of France. You know?
Yeah.
I could hear Jared laughing from the... All right, and then earlier than that, mass hysteria. I always find this... I
love mass hysteria.
I find it so interesting because of, like, witch trials and the dancing disease or whatever that was.
The dancing plague, yeah. I find mass hysteria just sounds so incredibly unconvincing as an explanation for all of these things.
Totally.
But it's, like, always more convincing than any alternative.
Yeah, I find mass hysteria really interesting because I don't believe in mass hysteria.
Exactly. That's where I am at. So
every time that somebody's just, it's mass hysteria.
It's okay, but what was it actually?
Right. There's a mystery afoot here,
And it's true. Mass hysteria, if you go to the Wikipedia article on it or something, that's the best just example I can think of. It's a real short article.
Right.
And it's just like, it's a phenomenon that's psychologists have said happens.
Right.
But it's like idiopathic fever. It's like, this is a thing we just don't. We have a term for it because we can't explain it.
Right, exactly. Like, we can't figure it out, so this sounds good.
So, yeah.
And then rectangular UFOs. We got enough time to talk UFOs later, so I'm going to skip on to Tom DeLonge, even though that's UFOs, because...
Indeed.
I grew up as kind of a punk kid. I was into punk.
Sure.
And then the 90s hit, and punk got all like skateboarder bro and football bro. And then Blink-182 came out, and so every time I hear Tom DeLonge, I'm just all like, I don't know. This guy's band's
it has nothing to do with his beliefs. It's
right.
Purely just on a musical level. If you don't respect
right.
him.
Well, no, that's not it. It also makes me feel ashamed about myself because I got this buddy Chad who was like, the emperor of punk when we were kids or whatever.
The emperor of punk.
Yeah, the emperor of local
His
punk.
Majesty.
He's going to hate that I said that. Everybody else will laugh about it, But even now, he's all grown up and he's just all like, yeah, they're a pretty good band. They write some good songs. And I'm just all, man, if Chad can get over it, can't I get over it? Why can't I get over it? Chad's all grown up now, but I can't.
Maybe you just have more refined tastes.
I don't know. I don't think that's the case because I've come to the conclusion that I'm an anti-conformist, which is...
You're a contrarian.
I'm just a different kind of conformist. I conform...
Just to the opposite.
To the opposite. But I'm still a conformist.
I sure don't like putting babies on spikes. Well.
Yeah, well, here I am on the radio. I used to have a newspaper. It's like print was dead. And I'm all, maybe I should start a newspaper. And everybody's just all, radio's a dying medium. And I'm all, maybe I should start a radio show. I can't... I mean, here I am. Yeah. I'm doing it because...
Well, we're doing a conspiracy show, so if anything, it's an undead medium.
I like that. There's a T-shirt in there somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. You could do something with medium, because, we have mediums on.
Right, undead, medium,
conspiracy. Somehow.
All right, we're going to work on that.
Yeah, we'll have to workshop that.
All right, we're coming up on break here. Tonight, our guest is William Pullin, and we're going to be talking about where, why, and how the most common places for UFO sightings to happen are.
I'm excited.
I'm interested to see when they happen, where they happen, and
why they happen.
I don't know if we're going to get that answer.
Yeah, we're not going to get that.
William's pretty pragmatic. All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back.
You're listening to Chauncey and Kara on Radio Wasteland. Find all our shows and archives by visiting Radio Wasteland at radiowasteland.us.
All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland and our guest, William Pullin. William, I'm not sure if I should still call you a guest. Maybe I should say our friend returning, William Pullin. William, you there with us?
I'm here. I'm good with whatever label you can apply to me, so I'm good.
Well, most of the other ones I want to use aren't allowed to be said on the radio.
Friend and ally, Archduke,
Grand
Inquisitor.
How are things in California?
Good. It's finally, we've hit some nice weather, finally. It's pretty much...
Spring in Reading is a 3-4 week affair, so we're enjoying it.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we're back to fire season, probably.
Right. We have fire season and we have water season.
Right.
And then we have, about a month total of nice days.
Yeah, that's true. But my wife, I don't know. She's
all like Texas, yeah.
She's all about the brutal heat. But when I lived in Arizona, there was 1 month of spring, 10 months of summer, and then a month of monsoon season where it just rained. but there's no drainage, and so everybody got flooded out. So.
Yeah, that sounds
gets
familiar.
Worse. Yeah. So, William, tonight our show, we're going to be talking about where the most common UFO sightings happen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess we should probably hop right into this. There's a couple of ways to address where the most sightings happen. So let's hit it like where in the world geographically. What are we thinking there?
Well, there's certain hot spots. South Central, I was going to say Chicago, South Central Colorado, California. South America has been a hotbed of UFO activity for decades. And, of course, there's always the wave phenomenon where a geographical area has an influx of sightings for a short amount of time, and then it kind of fades away. But there are certain areas of the world, like I said, California, South America, Australia is pretty active with UFO sightings, and that's kind of been maintained through the decades. So, but any numbers we get are kind of skewed because, of course, most people don't report these things.
Right. Yeah.
And, of course, the vast majority of these are explainable by mundane means. So, in today's society, most everybody is looking down at their phone.
Oh, yeah.
So, whatever's in the sky, whether it's extraterrestrial or not, a lot of it's not being spotted. They're not looking up.
Yeah, I guess Tel Aviv has the very first crosswalk light on the ground to tell you when to stop and go because of people looking down at their phones.
Wouldn't there be more like photos and videos, though, because people have their phones, so if they do look up, they'd be...
Not if they're not looking. And, everybody always says they had a phone. Why didn't they take a picture? But these things are moving quickly, I mean, by the time I get my phone out of my pocket, but I guess other people just constantly have it going. But I don't really
You don't keep your phone in a little quick draw holster.
Totally, like your janitor keys,
Fastest phone in the West.
Yeah, totally.
That's funny, that scenario. I recall, his name is escaping me right now, but there was a researcher that worked for NICAP in the 60s, and he would carry a camera with him all the time, loaded and ready to go in case he saw a UFO.
Wow.
And this is, of course, this is pre-cell phone.
Right.
And, of course, nowadays everybody's carrying a cell phone which has a camera and a video device contained within. So I find that troubling because at some point someone's got to take a picture.
Right.
Not everybody's going to be... not everyone's going to be like kind of deer in headlights if they see one. Somebody's going to think, okay, let me take a picture of this thing. But we really don't have that, so that's kind of troubling.
Yeah, but if you think about it, a lot of these places that these sightings are happening, the American Southwest, Australia, South America, these are places that don't have a lot of light pollution, which is where most of these cameras are and these people are. So most of these sightings, I'm just guessing off of the stuff we were given here, are areas without a lot of light pollution where you can actually see the stars and see the sky a little bit better.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, you have an urban sprawl. The skies are polluted with light, non-natural light.
Right.
So if something is emitting light of its own, it's flying in the sky, it's going to be lost in the blur of all the other pollution, as opposed to a place with a lower population. That immediately means you have, or generally, it means you have less technology, which means less light pollution. Yeah. So it's more a natural look. You're looking up at the sky, you can see the Milky Way, you can see the stars. There's a lot less pollution to kind of run through before you can actually see a UFO. I mean, it's more apparent if you see one. But then the other side of the coin is that certain areas that have a higher density population report a higher number of sightings. And that kind of makes sense, too, because if there's more people in an area, there's more likely going to be more eyes on the sky than, say, an area that's less densely populated. So there's arguments both ways, but you're right, the light pollution issue is that's very problematic.
Yeah,
for trying to spot something.
Have you ever seen a terrible movie from the 90s called Arrival, and Charlie Sheen was in it?
Yes, they actually made a sequel to that, too.
Yeah, I saw them both, with the backward knees aliens.
That was a horrid movie. Yeah.
I know. I've seen it like 4 times, but I know it's terrible.
I apologize.
But, I think about that because I'm always like a little surprised that South America is such a hotbed for these sightings. And it makes me wonder, like, let's say, okay, UFOs are here, aliens are here, and they are doing the thing. So for the sake of argument, let's just say that is happening, and we know it. That movie sort of proposed the idea that they were kind of terraforming the planet, but whatever motivations is fine. But they were going to less technologically advanced parts of the world where they could do those things without the scrutiny of governments and stuff noticing. So that kind of crosses my mind because I'm just all, why would UFOs be hitting up South America? What exactly is going on? I mean, are they into...
But then it should be like Africa.
Yeah, but I mean, are they into beaches? Do they like the rainforest?
Yeah.
Do they want cocaine? I don't know. What are...
Are those the things that you know about South America? Just beaches, rainforests, and cocaine?
Well, that's why Americans go there.
Okay, well, that's fair.
I've always had this idea that in South America, certain areas of the world that are maybe the UFO issue is less taboo to talk about. Perhaps people are more comfortable reporting these things, so that may explain why there's more sightings reported because people are actually coming forward, as opposed to some other countries where that the ridicule factor is kind of still in play.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's an issue. But having never lived in South America or Australia, that may be an incorrect assumption. But there's so many factors that come into play when trying to wrap your head around the numbers that are reported. But I always go back to most people don't report these things. So I wonder how skewed are our numbers? How incorrect are they? Or how inaccurate are they? Because we're drawing these patterns and making these assumptions and drawing conclusions off numbers that may be incorrect to a greater or lesser degree. So that's very troubling too. But it might be the arrival. I don't know.
It would be nice if we could get something like Google and Facebook on board with some of these ideas, because they actually have teamed up with one another when it comes to the flu, and they are actually able to track the flu as it crosses the country before it even happens. They're able to see where people are talking about it, make note of that data, and actually say where the flu is going to hit next. And they could probably do this with all sorts of topics, because for every person who's not reporting it, they probably are talking about it on social media or in other places that we just can't get the data.
Yeah, that makes logical sense. Yeah.
But I don't think they take it seriously enough, I guess.
So you're proposing that large corporations should use surveillance technologies to track our UFO discussions.
Well, they're already doing it for our other discussions. I mean,
I'm just saying that's like, I think, 3 different novels or movies or whatever just rolled into one proposal. Haven't
you figured out that my view of everything is really just an amalgamation of a bunch of movies that I saw?
No, that's fair.
So,
no, you're right. It's our ability to wrap our head around this phenomenon to a greater or lesser degree is kind of influenced by our ability to use our technology. And certainly social media, Google, Facebook, these are all avenues to report and keep track of data, just raw data. And we can use that technology to whatever means for any subject matter, be it whether it's the flu or the UFO issue or whatever the case may be. I don't know if anyone's really doing that right now, but and maybe that would give people an opportunity to report these things anonymously,
right?
Which may lead for people to actually come forward if they're not having to put their name on a report or put a face to a person. If they're more comfortable just giving their testimony without revealing anything about themselves, That might bring more reports to light. But then you come to the issue with that is it's impossible to investigate a report unless you're able to background check the witnesses.
Right.
Well, you can use social media for that,
too. Double-edged sword.
All right. Well, we're coming up on break here. You're listening to William Pullin. We're talking about UFO sightings, when, where, how often, and at what consistency and all that nice stuff. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We're talking to our buddy William Pullin. We're talking about sightings. We hit the first segment. We were kind of talking about the logistics. Where are those sightings? We were hitting the American Southwest. We were hitting South America. We were hitting Australia. In this segment, I'm kind of curious to maybe talk about what types of places within those areas they're hitting. There's always been the brought up of, any nuclear facilities, nuclear silos, nuclear reactors and stuff. There seems to be some correlation there with sightings. What types of places are we seeing these sightings?
Well, the Great Wave of 1947, a lot of it was focused on, like you said, the American Southwest. A lot of the military sites, White Sands, New Mexico, Roswell Army Airfield, Muroc Army Airfield, and now it's Edwards Air Force Base in California. Military sites, especially military sites that were conducting secret experiments or what have you, seem to report a lot of sightings. Of course, then to be influenced by military personnel scanning the skies for possible spy satellites, spy airplanes, what have you. I mean, so
not to mention experimental craft.
Beyond that, there's not really a huge increase in sightings when you get close to urban areas, which is interesting because you have a higher density population. You would think with more people in a certain area of the planet, you would have a higher incidence of UFO sightings, but that doesn't really happen. So. Beyond the nuclear power facilities and then military sites, there's no other specific type of structure or area which seems to have a higher incidence of UFO sightings per se. It's always thrown out there in the community, but just from a number standpoint, they really don't jump out at you. There's no other facility like a zoo or a park or a city hall where things are seen overhead with a higher level of incidence. So,
right. I always thought it was weird that people are, I listen to this stuff and I try to believe what I can. I try to get in there, and every time they bring up sightings around military bases and nuclear power and silos and stuff like that, I can't help but to automatically think, well, of course, it's military, it's experimental aircraft, it's stuff like that, So they seem to be a difficult place to really sort of find, at least for me, somebody who is a skeptic who wants to believe these things. That's a tough area for me to believe because it seems so logical that it could be so many other things.
I'm with you. Yeah, I think that the vast majority of UFO sightings are mundane in nature. But when they're over a nuclear but when they're over a military facility, my first gut reaction is that's a military aircraft of some sort, whether it's known to the public or the military or it's secret. That's my first gut reaction. So I think the percentage of explainable UFOs actually increases going over those military test sites because the vast majority, I think, are secret aircraft. Whether it's over, let's say, a more mundane Air Force base where they're not really conducting anything experimental, then you get to other Air Force bases and other facilities that are clearly of a higher security level, and they're experimenting with aircraft, whatever the aircraft may be. At some point they've got to fly these things over those facilities.
Right.
And those airspaces are closed, but sightings still occur.
But not from an angle.
So it just tells me that's military aircraft being seen. So.
Yeah, this one wasn't on our agenda to talk about, but hopefully you maybe know something about it, but no worries if you don't. It seems to me like a year ago to about 3 years ago, there was a big boom in people saying that there were offshore underwater alien bases where there were a lot of sightings of craft off the coasts of cities. What do you make of those sightings?
I don't make much of them. I mean, I haven't seen any concrete proof or documentation to lead me to believe that there's some non-terrestrial bases established offshore. I hear a lot of stories about things being reported off the coast of Southern California. And supposedly there's an extraterrestrial base offshore in the Pacific Ocean. I don't know how one would go about proving that other than a fleet of submarines going down there and checking things out. I mean, I just don't know. Now, USOs and unidentified submerged objects are seen underwater, and some do break the surface of the water and become UFOs, flying objects. Those are reported. And some of those are unexplained, but making the leap that there's actually an established alien base there, I'm not comfortable making that leap. So, I'm still skeptical about that.
Just for curiosity's sake, what are some notable or credible USO sightings that you know of? Because this is kind of new to me. I haven't really heard about this.
Well, there's numerous sightings I've read in the literature, but none of them really leaped out off the paper at me and made me think, okay, this is a multiple witness sighting with documentation. There's some level of physical evidence. There was a radar trace or whatever. None of those seem to have those, doesn't fill that criteria for me. So they're kind of vague. They're lights under the ocean. People may see them off a yacht, or someone is flying in a Cessna or a Piper Cub or some small aircraft, and they see something under the water, and they report it a light under the ocean. But because it's under the ocean, it's usually just vague lights. It's not something that a structure isn't reported.
I see.
Some form of a craft usually is not reported. It's more like just a light source underwater that looks unnatural.
Right.
Whether it is unnatural, I have no idea, but that seems to be the extent of the sightings. But of course, like everything else in this field, people make a jump to the exotic to explain them, as opposed to, well, this is probably, it might be something misidentified or something natural in occurrence. Because it's unknown, they make the leap to alien first, as opposed to trying to explain them.
It also seems that it's like a big sort of open no man's land, a place that we all know is very unexplored. And it seems to me like one of the thoughts that passed through my mind is that people who are trying to make a buck kind of know that they could come up with whatever they want out over the ocean and really not be proven wrong in their lifetime. You know, I don't know if I'm saying that very well, but it seems like a great place to sort of invent something.
Oh, sure, yeah. And I think in today's UFO community, or today's society, it's become a lot easier to do that. You wouldn't even need the ocean. You could just make up a story about anything. And because people don't use enough critical thinking or use logic, they will believe that without really looking into the validity of the claim. That happens all the time. So, and unfortunately, that makes researchers and that makes the general public not really pay attention to the problem. And the trouble is, there are a few cases that are strong, that remain unexplained. They have a lot of evidence and a lot of different aspects of evidence that really make these things. It's really a thought-provoking case, but they're not looked at because they're bunched up with these other cases that are just flub or crap.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big problem too.
Well, that's where a lot of the mockery comes in. That's where a lot of the stuff comes in, where the stuff's not taken seriously because so many times it's been proven to be something else, and then people just automatically assume. All right, William, we're coming up on our break here. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. We're talking to our guest, William Pullin, about UFO sightings. Come on back. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We're talking with our guest, William Pullin. We're talking about UFO sightings. William, I thought we'd spend a little bit of time right here talking about how there seems to be a decline in UFO sightings, and I think a lot of people would attribute that to technology and everybody, I don't know, thinking they got it figured out. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think there's a decline in UFO sightings?
Yeah, I've heard reports like that from a lot of credible researchers. There may be a decline. As to why there's a decline, I have no idea. But I'm cautious about that because, again, the numbers are skewed because you don't know what percentage of people are actually reporting these things. Mm-hmm. So any conclusions drawn are kind of have to be viewed in a cautious light. I don't know. I've been looking over some papers and research books that I've gotten over the last couple of years that have made the case that there is a decline in sightings. Although I wonder if that's a decline in general sightings as opposed to a decline in high quality sightings.
Yeah, that's a good point,
Yeah, because there's also the levels. There's multiple witness sightings. There's the average single person seeing something. I wonder if that's a general statement about all sightings overall, or is it about a specific type of sighting?
Right. If you type UFO sighting into YouTube, then you'll get, tens of thousands of videos of UFOs, but how many of them are? Exactly.
Well, earlier we talked about how light pollution is possibly one reason why there might be less sightings, and then in the last segment we kind of talked about how crazies have kind of diluted it to this point where people are maybe less apt to even believe their own eyes because they're just all like, it's got to be something else because all these crazies talk about this stuff. One thing that crossed my mind about why there might be less sightings and less reported sightings is a level of snooty entitlement. And that is, I know this sounds weird, but we've gotten to this world of technology where we're so inundated with technology that if we were to see something that we couldn't explain, how many of us would just say, I'm sure that's explainable because we're humans and we're awesome. I just don't necessarily know, and just kind of move on without a thought.
I see your point. I've seen some of that on social media, comments that come off like that. They don't take someone else's sighting seriously. Mm-hmm. Because they assume that it's something explainable or not important, or it didn't happen to me, therefore it didn't count. That kind of scenario. I think there's something to that. And then I wonder, going back to the light pollution scenario, are there fewer sightings being reported? Is that because they're not being reported or they're not being seen?
Right.
Because those are two different things. I don't know. Because human population is exploding. Therefore, light pollution is increasing over the planet's surface. So maybe things just aren't being seen, and they're not being witnessed to report them. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
The majority of people do live in urban areas. Most of the population growth is in areas with a lot of light pollution. So.
Yeah. And I thought you brought up a good point earlier that I think people would quickly laugh off, but I don't find it to be one that would be laughed off, and that is that everybody's looking down. Everybody's involved. And people can say, oh, well, they're all just looking at their phones. That's not necessarily it. We're so inundated with media and technology that people are just constantly focused or reverse focused by checking out into something else. Just take away the phone. When I'm driving my car, I spend 90% of the time that I'm not staring at the road driving, looking at the radio station and hitting buttons trying to find a song I don't hate. You know, and so like even in the case of that, I'm focused on something else, you know, so we really just, maybe we're just not finding our entertainment in the dream much anymore, which involves looking up, looking around, and sort of dreaming a little bit because, you know, I always have a movie to watch. I always have a podcast to listen to. I always have something else going on.
A UFO podcast. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, as technology has increased, as technology has begun to run our lives more, we're becoming more and more unaware of our surroundings, our natural surroundings, and what's going on around us, because we're so distracted and focused on what we're being inundated with, data and other things we're focusing on, as opposed to looking up at, or noticing how the weather is, or what's in the sky, or what's not in the sky, or the natural world around us we're not aware of, and becoming less and less aware of it as generations pass. So that could be part of it too. It's like you said, it's not just as simple as looking down at your phone. It's more of the scenario is people are just not focused on their natural surroundings. They're more focused on something else.
All right.
Yeah, we're definitely more distracted. So.
Yeah, we're checked out.
So, yeah.
You know,
if you're listening to this in the car, then, you know, watch the road and maybe look up.
Right. You know, well, like every night I try to turn off my computer and stop working by about 11 o'clock. I end up working till about 11:30. And then I say I'm going to just watch something and I'm going to go to bed by midnight. And I end up going to bed by 1 o'clock. And then I listen to something as I go to bed, and I say I'm going to fall right asleep, and I listen to half an hour. So my plan is to get to bed by 11:30, and I don't get to bed until 1:30 because I'm so invested in pointlessness, frankly. You know, I mean, last night I'm watching Supergirl. It's terrible. You know, but I mean, that's what I do. You know,
you told us last segment that you had watched Arrival 4 times.
Yeah, and the sequel.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may have it worse than
that's
most.
uncalled for.
Yeah. I watch a lot of terrible stuff. All right, so William, it's been great having you on the show. Why don't we talk a little bit about your Facebook group? You're probably getting sick of talking to me about your Facebook group because, of course, you and I, we both know about it.
Now we're thinking you're probably up at night scanning my Facebook group. That's what you're doing.
Right,
so.
yeah.
Which is good. So, no, everyone can find me at my interactive UFO group on Facebook. It's called the Ufo'real, a historical review. And I also launched in February a personal blog on Facebook where I kind of throw out my personal opinions about the UFO community and its issues and the enigma itself. So that's cleverly titled William Pullin.
Oh.
So
that is creative.
Might be difficult to remember.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm following that one. You're going to have to invite me to remind me to check it out. I'm making a note.
I'll send you one right after we get off the air. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Well, you know,
take care of that. Yeah.
William, it's always great to have you on the show. You are definitely a regular, and you're a regular on purpose because we love to have you, and the conversation's easy. I was talking to my wife when I was leaving today, talking about how tired I was because I'm attempting to exercise, and she's all, well, who are you having on? And I'm all, I'm having on William, and she's all, well, at least it'll be easy for you, you know. And I'm just, all right, you know, that's pretty great.
I appreciate that. No, I love having you, being on the program. You guys are too kind to me. So.
All right. Well, you've been listening to William Pullin, and until next time, when William is on again, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. We've been talking to our guest, William Pullin. You know, what'd you think of that loser there, Kara?
Well, you know, it's always just a pain to wade through these.
That's why we have them on every 3 months.
No, seriously, it was a good one. I always like these ones where we kind of zoom out and like look at a phenomenon kind of as a whole and try to see if we can see patterns or anything.
Yeah.
Because, we do a lot of shows that are like, check out the spooky story, right?
Yeah.
And I love that too. But it's always nice when you can put the spooky stories in context.
Yeah. When we get a little more philosophical, a little more macro-sociological.
Although, that said, like, the context in this particular case was we don't really know anything.
I think that's the context, at least from our angle, on just about every show.
That's true.
I think... what is his name? I can't remember his name. He's actually been on the show a couple of times. Paul
Blake Smith.
Paul Blake Smith.
Yeah.
That was one of the shows where I really felt like I was given some concrete information that really kind of changed my view on something.
Which show?
When we were talking about the Willard Hotel plot and JFK.
Yeah.
When I was listening to that stuff, I'm just all, a lot of this is making a lot of sense. Not to say, obviously we're talking about William Pullin, and the thing that I like about William is that we know that we're coming in to talk about something that we're all trying to figure out together.
And he doesn't go beyond what the evidence
Right, but I bring up Paul Blake Smith because that's really one of the shows where I really felt like I was given
where you got
real world answers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But answers are in short supply here on Radio Wasteland.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We're more about the questions. We're question peddlers.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But the thing I like about talking with William is that he's very much like us. He's specifically interested in UFOs. We have a little more of a hodgepodge of what we're after. I'm sure he has interest there too, but he specifically likes to talk about UFOs, and it makes me think of my day job. My day job is I'm an SEO. And for those listening, I'm a search engine optimizer. That means that I basically take a business and try to have them show up ahead of their competitors in search engines.
Just search and destroy. You're an assassin.
Right. Yeah. So the thing is, when I'm dealing with Google, a search engine, and I'm trying to figure out how it works, it's basically an entire industry of SEOs gets together and experiments, writes papers, tries stuff, and they're reverse engineering something that we don't know.
Right.
And that's kind of what I like about talking with William is I feel like we're sort of reverse engineering the phenomenon. We're talking about all the little things and saying, okay, what's credible? Let's take all these little credible pieces in this conversation and try to find some sort of common ground that we can walk away from and feel like we accomplished something.
What's weird is it doesn't sound like there's a tremendous amount of pattern to, like, if you just look at the credible sightings. They're really kind of all over the place. Just a bunch of, like, isolated, really weird events.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And some of them get really weird. And And I think one issue with UFO sightings is I think the spiritual aspect of ufology has sort of demeaned the scientific aspect of it. That's not to say that there isn't credit to be had over here, but I feel that the two of them should sort of be addressed separately, because I feel like the personalities that are interested in both aren't interested in the other, and it sort of creates this sort of like tension, this write-off ability of half of the things that are being said.
Yeah.
Because you end up hearing somebody saying like, yeah, the spacecraft appeared to me and Jesus walked out, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm out. I'm out on this story. We're done.
Yeah, you should have just said it was a Middle Eastern guy on a beard.
Yeah.
Carrying a cross.
Right. Totally. But I have to say, one of my favorite science fiction stories, I brought it up 1,000 times here, is Childhood's End, where the spaceship does land and the devil really does walk out of the spaceship. And they have a really good explanation as to why in the story, So it's a great book. I don't want to give anything away, but it is totally interesting.
Well, all these sightings, I think it's just a drunk driver in a time machine.
Totally.
Just swerving wildly. And
yeah, this is one for Jared. It's the You think I was thinking you were the time-traveling drunk driver? No, that's not what I meant. What I meant was that one episode of Futurama where they sit there and drink the beers and go through time in the time machine.
And they accidentally go too far.
Yeah, and so they have to go all the way back around again.
Loops back around,
Yeah.
All right, so you're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back. We got some more for you. All right, welcome back to Radio Wasteland. Kara, this weekend I was doing what people do, and that is I was celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Sure.
And, I work on Mondays, so I don't go out on Sunday. So I'm at a barbecue on Saturday. And okay. I'm sitting there talking to my friend Eric, and Eric we're talking about the show and stuff like that. He's listened to the show since we started. And
oh, geez.
I know.
Is he okay?
No. Well, so he's opposed to the flu vaccination. And,
so no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he gets the flu a lot, So, we were talking about vaccinations.
That'll happen.
We were talking about vaccinations, and I wanted to get your take on this. He is just opposed to the flu vaccination. He didn't express that he was opposed to trying to eradicate smallpox or anything like that. Just the flu vaccination. And
okay, that's a little bit random, but go on.
Well,
did he say why?
Yeah, that basically his argument was, why are you so scared of getting the flu?
Well, because the flu can kill people. It does kill people. It kills old people and young people and immunocompromised people, and the more people who have the flu, the more likely it is that one of those people is going to get it. Yeah, no, I'm not defending the argument. I'm just saying that was kind of his argument. Just kind of thinking it through on the air.
And this led me to the thought, because as you do when you talk to somebody who has a different opinion than you, when you're not some hardcore leftist or rightist that refuses to have a conversation and try to meet somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. It led me to the thought. You check out their
weak points and you whip out the machete.
Yeah, totally. You just go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about how they should all die. And it led me to the thought that the problem here is that we can't get along as people, and that vaccinations are a prime area where this is a problem. So the common cold, chances are, thousands of years ago, tens, hundreds, thousands of years ago, it probably was brutal and killed people. Lots of people.
Well, are you sure?
Well, the way we know life evolves is that it doesn't want to kill its host. And that, life wants to survive. And so
the common cold isn't just one thing, though. It's it's zillions of different viruses, none of which are designed to infect humans specifically, which is why they have weird reactions. But they're not deadly. So
yes, I'm being vague though on purpose. Like SARS is just going to eventually be the common cold. These things they work that way as our immune systems battle them down.
Okay,
and that's the way these things work.
Fair. Yeah,
and it sort of seems to me that unless we were to all get along and say, yes, as a society, we're going to eradicate smallpox, it seems like it might be sort of counterproductive to not do that. I mean, here we are in Oregon. There was the big breakout of the mumps and the measles or something. I don't remember what it was, but
yeah.
But I was just sort of thinking about how, is it practical for us to try to do this when not everybody's on board?
Well, everyone used to be on board. From the discovery of penicillin, from the discovery of vaccinations, basically until 2005, there were 2 measles outbreaks.
Right.
And now there's, zillions because this anti-vax thing has appeared in the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
So it's this is why we can't have nice things. But also, we did make it work. We made it work for a while.
Yeah.
And then people went crazy.
Yeah. Well, it proves that they're still out there.
Yeah.
We didn't eradicate them entirely.
Well, of course not, because you can't eradicate them. You can just suppress them to the point where they're not an issue anymore.
Right, yeah. So, I don't know, what's your take on it? It's like, how do we solve that?
Make vaccinations mandatory.
You think we should?
Yeah. You don't let people choose things like that because people are very dumb.
You're a socialist.
Think about it like this.
I am a socialist.
I'm kidding.
Just the seatbelt law.
Okay.
It's illegal to not use your seatbelt, so
Right.
people don't die.
Same exact thing.
Yeah.
Right, but at that point, we're having a freedom taken away from us.
Yeah,
And that's the argument about the seatbelt or the helmet law.
yeah, that's what laws are.
Well, no, in the case of the seatbelt and the helmet law, we have a law that's basically based on statistical data, and it's basically said it's cheaper for us and our healthcare system to have people wear seatbelts than it is to take care of the people who fly through the windshield. That's ultimately why the law was created. Same with the helmet law.
Also true of outbreaks.
Right, but where do you draw the line on freedoms there?
What do you mean?
Vaccinations, basically, right?
Well, actually, I think
I'm playing devil's advocate here.
I think there's a lot of things people should be compelled to do because they're not smart enough to know otherwise, and if it gets tyrannical, then the people should revolt and butcher their leaders with guillotines.
So you think we should be in this constant cycle of working our way up to socialist control, and then when those people go corrupt, we burn them to the ground and we try again, and eventually we'll get the right situation?
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That makes sense.
I mean,
that's not too unreasonable.
I think after a few cycles, eventually, just the threat of violence is enough.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, one of the things that's so impressive about countries like the United States, France, Britain, Canada, whatever, is not really democracy or whatever, because a lot of countries have that, and, we're not even that democratic as far as it goes. What's impressive is we've gone 200 years, almost, with a bump along the road of unbroken, just peaceful secession of power.
Right.
Or succession of power, not secession of power. Right. That's anarchy.
That was the bump. The bump was the secession.
That was the bump. So what you really need is for a way for peaceful. What I was originally going to say is that I think we've kind of forgotten that sometimes you need to kill your leaders.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, sometimes you need to burn down the castle.
Exactly. We haven't cleaned house in a while. We're like hoarders.
That's true.
We've still got all this old stuff just lying around.
Yeah, it allows them to create their little shady nets that weave their way through the fabric.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And eventually, they're going to have robots that can defeat revolutions, and then where will we be?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can't have that. We've got to revolt first.
All right. Well, thank you for answering my question. The question was, what do you think about the vaccination situation? And the answer
is kill all our leaders.
Kill your leaders. And you might be right, because that's interesting, though. You're pro-vaccination, but you're also pro...
right.
I guess in our society, patricide. Government patricide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
give your leaders lots of power, and when they abuse it, kill them.
Yeah. All right. Well, that kind of fits in with my belief system that that whether you were a dictatorship, a communism, or a democracy, any type of government would work if people just weren't mean and hateful human beings.
Yeah.
If people were just nice, who cares who's in charge? People are nice.
Yeah.
But people aren't nice. Yeah. All right. You're listening to Radio Wasteland. Come on back and find out what we got going on next week. All right, Kara, next week we have something very exciting for me. Do you know what it is?
Something about movies? Horror movies?
Close. A little more nerdy than that. We have Joseph Leacock coming on. He is an assistant professor of religious studies at Texas State University, and he wrote a book. Let me get the entire title here. Dangerous Games, What the Moral Panic Over Role-Playing Games Says About Play, Religion, and Imagined Worlds.
Oh, yes.
So I grew up as a D&D nerd.
In like the 80s, right?
Yeah. I
80s
would say
and 90s.
Yeah. No, it was the 80s. Yeah, by the 90s, I was interested in ladies.
What?
You know, the two don't really go together, or at least they didn't at the time.
Yeah.
You know,
that's funny because most of the people I play D&D with now are girls.
Oh yeah, so. At the time, yeah. It was, Yeah, it was a sausage fest, man. At the time,
yeah.
There was no ladies in the group. So yeah, a lot of D&D. I would wear a trench coat, and I had a briefcase, and I would carry my D&D books in it. Jared's like rubbing his head because he's like,
right.
So trench coat, briefcase, D&D books.
So you were
painting
the big man on
figures.
Campus.
Yeah, totally, man. Coolest, you know.
Yeah.
I would take a break, once a week for chess club.
I mean, trench coats are cool. Briefcases are cool. What's the issue?
Chess club's cool. Yeah. So it's always been interesting to me that Dungeons and Dragons had this, and I realize this isn't just about Dungeons and Dragons. Now we're talking about online games. We're talking about all sorts of stuff. Yeah. LARPers, whatever. But it's always been interesting to me that Dungeons and Dragons was so associated with like devil worship and like bad stuff going on. Because my group of friends were like, half of them were asthmatic, the other half, their moms like didn't let them out of the house. This really sort of gave me a nerdy place to go where I wasn't getting in trouble. I was really doing the opposite. We were renting out the pizza party room at our local Shakey's or whatever, so that we could have a 8-hour D&D game fest going on in there.
Do you know where your kids are? Yeah. They're doing recreational math.
Right. Yeah, totally. Granted,
because like advanced D&D in the 80s, it's not really even like this now. There's newer, streamlined editions that are, frankly, much more fun to play. But back then, it was like,
that was kind of the fun of it back then was...
Oh, sure.
That...
I've played advanced D&D.
You were building your character. Hey, I started before it was advanced.
Wow, okay.
So, I mean, I've been in there for quite some time,
But it was terrible. It was just like,
it was awesome.
I want to scale a rope. It's like, okay, let's flip through this massive source book to find the table on rope scaling.
Oh.
And like roll 2 D100s and locate the correct thing.
That was up to the dungeon master. A lot of the time, that stuff was not addressed.
Okay.
It wasn't so random. It wasn't
so
like
you just didn't enforce the rules.
Well, no, those weren't the rules. Those were appendices added on, and they didn't have to be used.
Okay,
that's not necessarily the way that it went.
All right.
Shows what you know.
Yeah, it does show what I know.
You think the whole thing was like a math equation about walking through the bushes in a game of Pokemon. But that's not the deal, man. You're telling a story, man. You're narrating.
Well, that's how I do it, obviously. But like, I've run through those source books. They're ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, they put it all in there because if there was a struggle, then they would apply it. Like if there was something at the end of the rope that they didn't necessarily want you to get to, they might... Your dexterity might come in as a factor at that point, but okay. Jared just put up a sign saying that we're getting off topic.
I forget what the topic was.
The topic is Joseph Leacock is coming on the show to talk about the influence that these games have had on society, and I'm assuming that he's calling the book Dangerous Games in a
reference to that.
Yeah. I assume that he's going to basically say that it wasn't a terrible place, but maybe it was. Maybe
right.
Maybe I don't know what's going on.
Maybe he'll come on to tell us that D&D encourages Satanism.
Well, it might have. There was a time or two that we went out and tried to light some stuff on fire, but we never killed anything small and hairy.
Right.
Yeah.
You just provided a gateway through which Lucifer can access this world.
Except for the 12-year-old neighbor kid, but I mean, he had it coming.
Yeah. He's only 12. It's like you hadn't invested that many years into him.
Totally. Yeah, he already had all the good ones.
Yeah.
All right, you're listening to Radio Wasteland. So next week, we're having Assistant Professor of Religious Studies at Texas State University, Joseph Leacock, on to talk about his book, Dangerous Games, What the Moral Panic Over Role-Playing Games Says About Play, Religion, and Imagined Worlds. Come check us out.